I work with them every day. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to for this next demo. So I aspire to be like Json. So I created this little project, and this is a very ugly, rudimentary project, so you'll have to forgive me. I'll start with the basic of the project. I was hoping we could build up this, but I didn't realize how slow I was going. So looking at this project, I'm just going to run this real quick so you guys can get a visual of what we're looking at here, and then we'll kind of tinker around with the code. So basically, again, this is very basic and ugly. So you can see I basically just stole the Hello World template and just kind of did some dumb stuff in there. But JW stuff, right? So Mr. J-Dub's here, right? He's my inspiration. What he doesn't know is that I'm such a fan of him that I have been stalking him. And I have been sneaking into his house and stealing toenail clippings and selling them on the black market and doing weird stuff. But it's all for the sake of good, right? Because it's healthy for me. So, so we have this auction site that I decided to build because I wanted to share the love of Json with everybody. No, why aren't you working? Gosh darn it, it worked like 40 minutes ago. All right, I'm going to have to bring up another version. All right, let me see. OK, well, let's go back and look and maybe see why we can get an idea why it broke. All right, so but essentially, I've stolen some of his stuff, and I built an auction site to auction it off because I want to share it with the rest of the world. So we have this current bid Razor file. All right, so there's my route. OK. And it's definitely not getting into here. Now, for the sake of, oh, I forgot to show you guys the authentication piece. All right, so for the sake of, yep, sorry. This stuff is being a pain. Why aren't you working? It's not letting me do anything. Let me close everything. Oh, thank you. Sorry. I forgot my computer died. All right, so let me bring that up. Where is that? Zoom it. Oh, darn it. All right, run this. OK, so there we go. OK, so let's look at, let's see if I can reopen this. I am in preview. Let me open this in admin mode. I don't think that's the issue, but just to be safe. All right, J-Dub's auction. Hopefully this works. You got some really cool stuff on this website too, man. I can't wait to show you guys. I can't believe the route didn't work. All right, so let's see here. Where's my file? All right, so we got current bid.razor. Maybe if I just try to run this again, let me see if it lets me set a breakpoint even, because it wasn't earlier. Oops. There we go. All right, well, let's try this again. We'll just leave the breakpoint, see what happens. Okay. Yes, yes, we know. No! I don't know why that's not working. All right, let's have a quick look at our, I believe it's the startup file. And see if we have our service, which it shouldn't matter. Yeah. Okay, let me bring up another project, see if it works instead. we'll just jump to the end of this and look at that one, which is, I forget which one. All right, library load. No, final. Okay. Well, let's just open it from here. No. Anybody got any good jokes? All right, final. All right, this one better work. If this don't work, I don't know what happened, because I had it running just before. All right, so let's run this. Acts like I have a bunch of stuff open. Okay, I got a good feeling about it. Yes, it worked. Hallelujah. All right, so, all right, here's some of the cool stuff. I stole his glasses. Yeah, those are X-ray vision goggles. You would not believe how the world opens up when you put those suckers on, let me tell you. I never coded better in my life than when I'm wearing his glasses when he's not here. Can't catch me. All right, trophy, all right? He won this as the sexiest man alive back in 1975. Of all years, right? We have, let's see what, oh no, come on, stop it. All right, there we go. We have his cloak, which makes you invisible, and he helped win World War III wearing that thing, defeat an entire army all on his own. All right, that's me trying to change my career and become a model. I kept my day job. All right, and then we got bobbleheads. So who doesn't love a good bobblehead of Json? That's Superman, right? So I know, totally cheesy, all right, but I like cheesy. So, and I'm the one doing the demo, so I get to do cheesy. All right, so and $5,000 for, what's that?
He's got a bunch of bobbleheads of himself.
Right? And they were all up on his mantle, too. That was the weirder part. So, yeah, Superman, Batman. So $5,000 for a bobblehead. You know, I got to have me a bobblehead. I'm going to put it right on my dash in my car, and we're going to love it. So I'm going to place a bid. And here you can see the beautiful UI aspects, right? This is why I want to keep collaborating with my UI friends. I don't want to tick them off because I want to make sure my site looks beautiful, unlike this. Okay, so we can place a bid, we can cancel a bid, we can do all this good stuff. All right, if I open up DevTools here, what you'll see is we can click these. We do all. All right, so similar. You're not seeing any kind of round trip post for doing any of this. This is all running inside the browser right now. All right, so $510,000 for a invisible cloak. You know, I think that's worth it, and I feel like going in debt, so why not? Let's keep bidding on that. Glasses, so all this highlights, right? Now, you'll notice over here there's this bid too. What we were supposed to be able to see, had I not wasted so much time, and had a computer die, is we were going to see the very basic version of this and build all this out, and you guys could see the concepts. So I'll try to make sure I cover everything and still get you guys home to kiss your family goodnight. All right, so you see this hidden text here, which means absolutely nothing, so you can ignore that, even though I pointed it out. So, okay, so another thing that we want to look at, well, I guess the first, simplest thing to look at first here is this is pulling back a JSON list, all right? And there's a whole lot of anti-patterns going in this code right now. So don't pay much attention to that. I would do a lot of things differently if I was rolling this out to production. But I have this data folder here, and I have this auction service, okay? So you'll see this is all I'm doing. I just added this for kicks and giggles for the demo, but this would be coming from some sort of data source or elsewhere. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this is my data up here. Very insignificant to the demo. I have these certain actions here that we can do. This is an async method that will, or function that will get us the list of all these items available for auction, right? Basic, essentially kind of equivalent to a controller, so to speak, in FMS. With the exception that this fancy doodad of logic is actually not running on the server at this point. All right, and then I have some JSON serialization where I deserialize that into some objects because I like IntelliSense and readability. Okay, so so this class here, I want to stop debugger, but I also want to leave it up. So let me do this. All right, we'll try to get this wrapped up here in 10 minutes. Okay, so you'll notice here when I mentioned the additional routes you can do, so I added some additional route handling here. This is the parameter that it is accepting. I'm accepting a value of int, the item ID, which is basically I want to be able to look up a specific item. So I want to focus on one single auction item that I care about, right? If you look down here in the code block, okay, this is a parameterized route. So in how you bind that, how that query string parameter gets bound into your code is right here. So this attribute that gets decorated on this property, this parameter attribute, I got to build this because I don't get the pretty coloring. That parameter is what does the binding to this property, to that query string. And you'll notice in the parameter I have lowercase, here's uppercase because it's property. So there's no issue with the casing in that sense of it, right? It's going to map correctly. What I will tell you is that if you have this data type here, so for instance, if I was to take this out, okay, it's going to default to a string value. And then if you set that data type on that parameter, oh, I'm sorry, let me do the zoom in. There we go. So what I had was, just in case you guys couldn't see it, my zoom in's getting in the way. There we go. Okay, so I have my data type set here. So this is pretty cool. You can set data types here. Now, I don't know if this is open to every data type or not, but versus like a reference type versus a value type, I'm not sure. So for now, I'm just using this int data type, and that gets mapped to this property down here, right here, okay? And then where we're using this is further down in this code. So we have this on Initialized Async. So this is the initial load event that gets fired when that page loads. Okay, so anytime you navigate back and forth on this page, so if I click on home and then come back to bid, this event gets fired, okay? So in here, I've got some fancy code. And again, I was hoping that we could have just like written this through so you guys could have really seen the effect of this. But what we're about to show you here, don't mind this, but I'm looking for that parameter here. If I find it, then I'm going to loop through my list and I'm going to get the item that I'm looking for. Wait. Well, let's test it, but that code doesn't look quite right, does it? Oh no, set item, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong place. Okay, so this code is actually redundant and should be removed. So this is the code that actually gets executed, and this is after that function, so it's actually executing this, which it shouldn't be, because I didn't intend for that, but it will get to here. All right, so this set item will now bind to this auction items off this auction state, and we'll get to this here in a second. So if I come back to here, it tells me I have to rebuild. Now, if you'll notice, if you lose connection over that WebSocket, that message just popped up and it grayed out your screen, right? And it's telling you, hey, I lost connection, you need to reload your screen. Okay, so we look at our bid and we place our bid. Oh, sorry, that's not what I was doing. So we're going to look at the second item. We want to see, I think it's going to be the trophy, because I just put them in order. There we go. So I can pass in the parameter. It bound to that property. The code caught it, and it showed only this one particular item. All right? And I can place my bid on just that item. OK, so that's parameterized routes. We're going to look in the kind of interesting feature on here is the state. All right, so there's multiple ways that you can persist state in a Blazor app. There's also the third-party options you have as well. But two of the main implementations that they have built into Blazor by default is this one here that you see commented out, this cascading parameter. I'll show you guys that one in a sec, but again, for the sake of time, we won't see how it works for this demo because I did it the preferred way. All right, so, well, actually sticking with this one. So you'll see this cascading parameter here on line 68, right? This decorates this property. If we go look at the, let's see, where did I put that? I put that in one of these higher files. I think it's main layout. Yeah, so you'll see I have this commented out. This cascading value has a value which binds to a server-side. When I say server-side, I shouldn't say that. This C# runtime instance, right? So it's going to go look at this this member here, and it's going to say, I want to persist this value. And how you persist this value is any controls that are embedded inside of this cascading value node. Any functionality in these, so you'll notice our app body here is getting rendered inside the cascading value. So anywhere where we're rendering that body, which our current bid, it has that logic in it, right, that binds all the auction items and lets them select it. It will use this, this object as the instance for that, and you can browse throughout the site and you can persist the state of that selection. All right, so this is how you would use a form of persistence in the Blazor app. I didn't like this route, and here's why I didn't like this, because for doing state management in this, I would not use this one out the box unless it has a specific use case where, say, you want to persist state for only the navigation, right? And you have a small piece of functionality that you need to persist a value throughout your menu items, then maybe I would use this method of adding this cascading value node. But for this case, what I wanted to do is, if we go back here and look, and I go back to the main list, I wanted to be able to place my bids. And so you'll see here I increment this count here. So my intent was that I could post anywhere. I could put even in the home page. I could show the list of everything I wanted to select. I could show what I've purchased. I could have a shopping cart is really what the concept here is, right? I place my bids. I want to place my order. I would go to a shopping cart. How do I persist that? So you would have a view up here at the top header where it would show your count. That's what this is to kind of simulate. So you place your bid and it counts up, okay? I don't need my entire website to have access to that object, right? The entire object doesn't have to know all of these auction items and what's been selected and whatnot. You only need certain pages. So how I did that was with dependency injection. And that's why this is commented out, because this solution was not my favorite. But if you go look at this current bid class, okay, we have this auction state property here that's been injected. All right, so this class has been injected into this current bid Razor component. All right, so this now becomes my stateful object that I can save all those selections to and pass that on. How that works is this gets injected here, and this is where it's really getting used. So this is what's doing the updating of that state object. And where that gets updated is, let's see here, right here. If they only want one, it gets updated right here if we want to bind the entire list. And then there's actually a select item, which I'll show you in a minute. So when it selects it, it will do some persistence to that object. Now, how you wire that up is over here in your startup. Where is the startup? Here we go. Okay, so if I go look for auction state, you'll see we can, similar to how you would kind of do dependency injection in almost any other framework. Oops, sorry. You'll see there's an add singleton and an add scoped, right? So you want to be careful how you would use these. You would, for a Blazor client side, it doesn't really matter. So singleton is a singleton, right? It's going to be across the entire application that it has one place in memory where it would be pulled from. So the add scoped is a little bit different, and that will add to the runtime instance for essentially kind of like to the user, right? It's not for the entire application. Not everybody's going to see it. I don't know exactly how the memory allocation works behind that, but I just know that it's more, my interpretation is at kind of the user level, right? So that's something to keep in mind working in this. Okay, so that's wired up there, and I showed you how this is persisted here. So if we go back to our demo, all right, this body here is what is working with that state object. Now, what I was telling you is how that gets persisted is you'll see this count. Oh, it's already placed. This increments anytime I select one of these. If I cancel one, it decrements, right? So this reflects. Now, there's a couple interesting things with this. The first is I also had to use dependency injection. And if we go look here at the main nav, you'll see here I had to inject this as well, right? So the difference between using the cascading parameter, which will persist state, and this is that this you still have to inject wherever you want to use it. But I like this. I think this is a lot cleaner than using the cascading value, especially in this use case. Any questions on the state? And then you'll actually, so real quickly, so I show you this state, and it's that same type. So I like how it's strongly typed. And where is it? It's being used here somewhere. Oh, yeah, right here. So this is where it actually gets set. So it's really easy. In order to persist that value, all I had to do was inject it and then just reference it right here. I don't need a model. I don't need controllers, all that stuff, or whatever jazz you want to work with. So it was pretty clean. This was something that I kind of liked, is this clean pattern that you can kind of work within Blazor. Yeah?
I have a question about the state persistence. Is it being persisted client side or server side?
This is in the client, so this is in the runtime. Wherever the runtime is getting executed is where that state is getting persisted. So in this case, this will be in the browser.
So like if you wanted that to go to some database or something, you'd have to make like a separate, like an AJAX call or something?
Yeah, yeah, and that is a possibility as well. And actually, you can you can still do HTTP calls in here as well. You're not confined to just doing the signal R. That's used for the SPA behavior, but you can still make API calls out using any other protocol you need to. You can use MSMQ in here. In this case, and for state persistent session management, you can still use other distributed locations. You could use database, Redis, any of those for distributed, not in memory, but I forget what I'm trying to say. But you can do that. You just have to obviously do a custom implementation of that. Okay? And the question was, sorry. Oh, you got it? Okay. Yeah.
Application. So,
all right, so how do you deploy it? I wasn't planning on covering that in the demo, but it's really straightforward. You have the same publishing capabilities that you would have in any other application as well. You can plug this into your CI/CD pipeline and release it that way. You can deploy this, like I mentioned earlier, you could deploy this directly to a blob storage if you wanted to. So you can connect this to your Azure accounts if you use that for cloud development, and you can release it that way. In our case, we would probably put it in our CI/CD pipeline, or CD, I guess, for the release management. But it's no different than how you would release any other application. The difference is you have a little bit more flexibility in how you host it.
there is a no webcon required in the specs, right?
Yeah, but that's because this is a .NET Core app, so it's got the app settings JSON file that you would use in place of that. So, and that's part of the framework itself. That has nothing really to do with Blazor. But the configurations and all that, anything that you would host with the ASP.NET Core app, you would do for this as well. Any other questions? I know we're getting late. I'm sorry. We'll wrap up here real quick.
One question.
Yeah.
Can you hook into local storage?
Yes, you can, but I forget. I did read about it. I didn't play around with that. I forget how they did that, though. But there are solutions. And actually on that GitHub website I had shown, Adrian, I think it's Adrian. But
Awesome Blazor?
yeah, Awesome Blazor, thank you. He had some examples, I believe, on there where some developers had done that. So, anything else?
Question.
Yeah.
On your two counter demos, you have the server side and the client side.
Mhm.
Well, on the client side, it brings down the framework, basically runs your codes. When you click that button, it increments the counter, and all's happening in the browser, basically.
Yeah.
On the server side, can you explain in terms to a non-web developer what happens when you click that button that makes the counter increment if it's not bringing your code down?
Yeah, so for the server-side portion of it, I'm trying to think this through, but the runtime, the bits are still hosted on the server itself. Those files are pulled down to the client, right? So very similar to almost any other kind of website right now, right? You still host in the back end on some server. So not much difference in that sense. And that's where your runtime code is still getting executed against. The only difference in this case, and actually let me see if I can pull it up quickly enough. Somehow this gets very temperamental on me over our Ash network. But I don't have to wait for that. So I had that little diagram on that one slide for the server side, right? So it shows your server, it shows you have that socket server side at that point in time. So it's going to make a call through that socket connection, execute that code on the server, which will apply the count, and then pull that back down to the client.
When you click the button, it's actually going back to the server. and
Yeah, that's
coming
my
back.
understanding. Again, I'm still working through this as well, but that's my understanding of it. And when you do that, though, it's going to inspect the response. So it's not doing a full page refresh. You're not doing a full post back, right? That connection stays open. It's going to make the request, get a response. It's going to inspect the response, see what's different, and then update only what's different in the SPA.
Okay. All right. And then one other quick question.
Sure.
About hosting on client side, could these just be local files on the hard disk that could be loaded up and run in the browser?
When I was reading about it, that was kind of what I was thinking. This is the stuff I've been getting lately. But that is what I was kind of wondering myself. I played around with it, and I couldn't get it to work. So my understanding is it does still have to make some sort of request to get those files and initiate the connection. So it would be something to play around with, because maybe I don't have quite the understanding of that part of it. But like I said, they say you can host it on GitHub, right, and pull it down from that. But it's still served, and it can still be pulled down. I may have just been doing it wrong. What I did is I published one of the projects, the client-side projects. I published it, copied that somewhere else, tried to run it, and it didn't run for me. And what it did have, though, is in one of the cases, the published output had an exe in it. So I ran that exe, and all it did was basically just spin up a IIS Express instance and then try to serve it through that. So it still seems like it has to be hosted on some sort of site, if that makes sense. Anything else? Okay, so a couple quick things just want to make mention of. All right. So we talked about state and using dependency injection and the cascading parameters. All right, so I'm not, again, we're out of time. But I just want to show this really quick. A couple other things you can do. So one of my initial concerns when I was thinking about Blazor and I was looking at the syntax, a pet peeve of mine is when developer, and this is just myself, but I don't like it when like your views are just full of back-end code and it's all throughout the views. I personally find it kind of hard to manage, hard to read. I like kind of the MVC pattern where you kind of separate that code. I'm more of a fan of that. So one of my fears was working in Blazor, you have these code blocks that you can inject your code in. Now the nice thing is that you don't really have a need to spread all this all throughout, right? You can keep your runtime code organized within the view. So that's good. But we're all lazy at times. We're all developers. We're all just human, right? And we don't like to follow rules so much. So I can just see it just getting really messy in here really fast. Okay, so one of the solutions they have, and what I did is when I was first writing this, where did that file go? I'm looking for the, oh, pages. There we go. Okay, so here's an example of it actually. Here's one of my tests I did. I kept the counter in for this because I wanted to show this. But basically in this current bid, if we look here, this was a small file that you can see has quickly grown, right? And this is just a very simple list, a couple buttons, nothing fancy going on here, right? And this page was already like, you know, 5 or 6 times bigger just doing that simple example. So you have a more complex view that you want to show, or a Razor component. This can get pretty ugly pretty fast, I would imagine. So I would want to refactor this and pull out quite a bit of this code and kind of keep it organized and clean so I can look at my views and kind of know what's going on and get through them quickly, right? So what you can do is, and I'll show an example, I can add a new class. All right, and I'm going to call this current bid, which I will have to rename the class here in a second. Okay, so I got current bid. I created this class. Oh, actually, I did this wrong. So now I'm going to rename it. You'll see it side by side. So now I'm going to rename it. Where's my rename? Go on. There we go. All right, I'm going to rename it the same as the view. And you guys may already be aware of this, but I kind of like this. Okay, so it automatically grouped it underneath the Razor component. So to me, this is a lot cleaner. Now what I can do is I can move some of this code that's in this view. I can take some of this code out and kind of stick it in this class and still use it in the same manner. It doesn't change the behavior of the runtime. Everything still works the same. You still do the same dependencies. I think you have to put inherit up here maybe, but yeah, you do, because the only difference is you can rename this to be the same. However, this class, you'll notice here we get this error. It already contains a definition. So your Razor component that's part of your namespace. So it expects that to be different. So we would call this, I don't know, something else, but current, I don't know, we'll call it JDubs for now, I guess, because he's my hero. So whatever. But you get the point, right? You can actually segregate that code a little bit, keep it cleaner, and stick it in here. Now, something else that I did is you have some other options as well. You'll have data access layers. You'll have other projects that you can include in these Blazor solutions. So some of this code here, I actually pulled out quite a bit of code. There's these get items, cancel items. You'll see, or the place bid, cancel bid, all that. There's a few functions that were in here, and I've already moved them out. But where I moved them was not in this class. I ended up sticking them in my service. So since I created a state provider, it only made code that was inside this current bid Razor component, and I was able to stick that in here. And now what that does is this opens up the possibility that if anything else has to manipulate that state later on, they have access to do that as well. So that logic is now organized and cleaner in that sense. Okay. All right. So I'm sorry we're over time. I apologize. But do you guys have any other remaining questions for me? And we'll just kind of end it at this. Okay. So yeah, go ahead. Just scream it.
So I'm going to ask you to speculate.
Oh boy.
So back when Netflix was creating their own content, people said Netflix is trying to become HBO before HBO can become Netflix. So since JavaScript has been kind of encroaching on server side, right? We've got Node.js. People are saying, hey, you're already writing JavaScript on the front end.
Yeah.
It's right on the back end too. Do you think Microsoft has taken a shot at becoming JavaScript before JavaScript can become C#?
That question has actually been floated around, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to actually kind of touch on that in my conclusion. But My answer is no. I don't think so. And the reason why in this case, so there's a lot of comparisons to this, interestingly enough, to Silverlight that you'll see out there. And I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Silverlight. I personally don't think it's quite the same, but I get what they're trying to compare it with, right? Silverlight was Microsoft's attempt to do something different on their own. In my opinion, and I know they were using HTML5 and whatnot, I think this is a little bit different in the sense that WASM is becoming very widely supported, and it's an open standard. It's not specific to just the .NET ecosystem. So in that sense, I think what they're trying to do is, I'm actually happy with it because I think it's a new pattern, it's a new trend that they're trying to adopt, and it's something that they're kind of getting in the forefront of as well, or in the early stages at least. Again, WASM is already popular in other ecosystems. So I don't think they're trying to replace anything, is my opinion. But I think they're just trying to get on that bandwagon early to where I think this will grow in popularity. I think it has some room for growth. And again, only the server-side project's coming out. So when the client side comes out, they still got quite a bit of work to do with that to really make that solid. So we'll see how that goes. But I think the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to see some very interesting trends with WASM. And I think WASM is kind of key what's going to drive that trend, not just Blazor. I think Blazor will evolve and change. Even with .NET 5, they're going to merge everything kind of together, right? And they're just going to have .NET. It's no longer .NET this, .NET that. It's .NET. So they're kind of merging everything together into this singular ecosystem. So Blazor will evolve, but I think WASM is going to drive the trend. Does that answer the question? All right. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry I kept you so long and all the little weird mishaps, but any other questions you guys might have before we close? All right, well, I'll turn it back over to Jason, and thank you guys for taking so much time and listening to me ramble on.